That's me. So we're already starting this episode where Michael is laughing for a reason I still don't understand. Kyle's yawning and rubbing his face, and I can't believe it's been so long since we recorded an Auto Collabs episode.
What in the world happened to us?
This is Auto Collabs.
I'm laughing because this is like when you can't stop laughing in church. You know you should, but you can't.
I call that the giggles. They call that
giggles,
the
yeah.
giggles.
Dude, I'm the worst at that.
This story that my friend just told me yesterday, which is so completely asinine and uncommon, popped into my head right when you were like, okay, let's record.
Do tell.
No. So here,
Can't
for
do
the
that.
first time, I am not going to tell the
For
story.
a different podcast.
This, though, is something I'm going to tell the both of you after, because I think you'll agree that this is the most
Inappropriate
crazy.
story you've ever heard.
Yeah. We can't talk about. But for those that listen to Auto Collabs, I want to do a reach out to our audience. If you are curious, even remotely curious what the story is, you're going to have to show up on our socials, on YouTube, on podcast apps, leave reviews, do all the things. And in your review, you have to say, I need to hear the story. At some point it will come out. But I'm going to tell the two of you after, but
At some point we'll have a podcast for all the things that we can't talk about on
We've
the
talked
podcast.
about this,
you know,
it's right before we're sure we can retire.
Guys, it's such a
Well, look, my face already hurts.
We can talk about the fact that Jordan Cox is going to be hanging out with us.
Oh yeah.
He's the marketing director for Gates Automotive. Marketing guys, always close to heart for the three of us, you know.
Tend to like those.
And I'm telling you, Jordan has probably some of the most energy that I've ever seen on social media. It's like a tie between him and Steve Russler, right? It's like who can just get full lit in every, like maybe him, Nathaniel Greklick, like who in the selfie game is just always just full send.
Strong,
right?
There's 3 strong contenders.
So we hope that you enjoyed this conversation that we had with Jordan Cox.
All right, Jordan, you and I had the chance to meet in person for the first time several weeks ago in Lexington, Kentucky. And I have to say, I really enjoyed being next to someone who actually has more energy than I do at a live event.
Well, I got to say the feeling is mutual because I loved every second of it.
It was
like
so
even,
much fun.
Even that morning, I'm like, Paul, I know I told you this story already, but the fact that we were just getting coffee and the ability to turn around and it's Paul Daly in person, and we've engaged forever on LinkedIn, but just seeing you in person and finally getting a chance to shake your hand and smile at you and have that two-way conversation, man, I loved it. I loved every second of it.
I love that the second thing you said, if for some reason you listen to the audio podcast and you've never followed Jordan on LinkedIn, he said, I got to shake your hand and smile at you, because that's like, that's the thing that you'll know. Jordan's like big old smile. He's got a big old smile on right now. He's wearing his sunglasses inside. Like it's just smile all day. And so like most people are like, I got to shake your hand and get to meet you and say hi and tell you about myself. And he's like, I got to smile at you, which is just the vibe that you put on.
It's beautiful. And you have a great smile. It's like one of those smiles actually that you're like, how can I like be negative, or how can I feel down when I have this like coming at me? And it's very unique. It's also incredibly genuine. Jordan, why don't you,
Paul,
let's talk about this for a second. So while we were at Kain event, you won an award, and I'll let you talk about the award. And my favorite memory of any content that we made on the ground was when you're walking up to show the camera your award when we were going to do a little podcast, and it broke in your hands. And the first thing you did was look up and be like, please tell me you were rolling.
Yeah, that's the most important thing, you know?
Oh yeah, I was.
Always be rolling. Always be capturing content. There it is.
That's
right.
right.
Tell us about the award, and kind of what that was for, and why you chose to do what you featured in that presentation.
Sure. And man, here I'm laughing and smiling so big that I'm crying. I'm having such a great time, guys. So thank you so much. We're only like 2 minutes into this. So much more to go. So that award was at the David Kain Client workshop, the digital workshop that they had 2 weeks ago down in Lexington. It's an event that David Kain puts on every year. This is the 18th time that he's done it. I know David from just because he's an expert in the automotive industry and everything digital. And Tim Cox praises him for being the smartest man in automotive. And I always make the joke that I'm going to top that and make him and say that he's the most beautiful man in automotive. Because if you've ever seen him, he's got these beautiful glasses. He's got this beautiful white hair. I always make the joke that he's a silver fox. He loves it. He loves the attention. But we were at that event, and we had the opportunity to participate. I had the opportunity to participate in the best idea competition. And they went through and selected these ahead of time, so you could submit a video. You could be a part of it that way. It was just really cool and really fun to do that. And I'm kind of lucky. I get to see David Kain 3 times a year in our 20 group. So anyone who doesn't know what a 20 group is, it's 20 different dealers from around the nation get together, and actually around North America, because we even have some people from Canada that have been a part of ours before. So that's always really cool to go to that and be a part of that.
Talk about what you actually, what the subject matter of your your award was, because I think that's the thing that really got my attention. I think a lot of listeners will benefit because you kind of had this mentality of like, hey, you can do this too, and here's how. So go ahead, I'll let you talk about it.
Yeah, Paul. The concept that I pitched was, hey, you have such great stories at your dealership, and you need to be able to share that. And no one can tell that story better than you and your staff. So what you should do is create a platform for that. And you do that through creating a podcast and just telling that story on a continual basis. You should also do it through creating employee spotlight videos. So it's a 2-minute piece of content about your employee. They sit down, you interview them, but you cut it down to about a 2-minute piece of the employee just telling a specific story. And again, you're guiding them through that and kind of telling that process and then cutting it down afterwards. And you can complete this in about an 8-hour day. And I know that sounds crazy, like if you've never done it before, but I promise, do it once. It might feel like a train wreck the first time, but I swear you can get through it and get it done. In an 8-hour day, you can shoot 4 episodes of your podcast for the entire month if you release them once a week. And then you can also shoot 4 employee spotlight videos. I would say your production workflow should look like you have an employee do the employee spotlight video, and then you have them sit down and do the podcast episode with them. The podcast episode is really kind of structured. I would even say similar to what you guys do, just because you guys always talk about relevant news. I think that's important to consumers, and there's ways to kind of intertwine your dealership story into that. So just doing like a really short hook at the beginning, 15 seconds. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in for our episode today. We've got some great content planned for you today. We've got this news article, we've got this second news article, but first we're sitting down with our sales manager from our Toyota store. So Scott, you're over here doing this, yada, yada, yada. You go right into it.
He's got it down.
He nailed it. He's like, bop, 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 bop. Got it.
So I actually started listening. I started listening like, oh, what is it going to be?
Yeah.
That's so good.
Oh, he's on our show. He's on our show.
Yeah. How long have you been doing the podcast then?
So look at that. It's a podcast in the podcast, right? It's like Inception. Yeah. So we've been doing it now for about a year and 4 months. We started at the beginning of 2022. Okay. We went through and created. So that was season 1. Season 1 is different than what season 2 is. And just so you guys know, and your audience knows, don't feel like what you're doing today, you have to stick to for the rest of your life.
Right.
Go through, do it for 1 season, get that done, and then figure out what you want that next big idea to be, whether it's a workflow difference, whether it's development difference, or even just a different feel. So season 1 was all about long form content. This is going to sound crazy, but we would have that employee sit down for an organic conversation, and sometimes they would be almost 2 hours long.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So Joe Rogan wannabe over here.
Exactly.
Joe Rogan. That's
so
great.
I was like, man, so Joe Rogan can do this and sit down and have this conversation. And again, we would intertwine not just like their story, their background, where they came from, but we would also intertwine for season 1, we would intertwine some education about the industry, or if they were an expert on Toyota, if they were an expert on Chevy, and just talk about the differences between the two. Or if we had a finance manager on, we would talk about, hey, how would you rebuild your credit if you're starting over? If you have bad credit, how do you rebuild that? How do you start over and start fresh? And yes, it's going to take a while to get through that.
Super relevant info.
Exactly. And
so tell us about
specific takeaways that they can have from that, which is awesome.
Tell us what the result was of you doing that and how long it took before you were like, okay, this is actually doing something.
Sure. The way that we got so much interaction off of it, first of all, I need to preface this. It's not like you can just toss it out on a podcast platform and get those views that way. There's got to be a bigger strategy behind it. So some ways that we did it was we branded it on all of our websites for our 4 rooftops and our group website. And then we also wanted to brand it on our vehicle VDPs. So we would actually
that's
put
cool.
these why buy
Really?
photos. So you've probably seen this a lot, is that you've got your vehicle photos, and then at the very end, they would have some why buy photos. Here's some photos of the dealership. Here's what this is. And we would put this promo in there too. And then we can track and see how many clicks we were getting from that. And you might be like, well, how do you get that click from over there? It's simple. You just make a domain. We picked gatescartalk.com. And anytime that anyone would see that VDP and get that promo, they could just enter in gatescartalk.com, and it would forward directly to where they could listen to that and experience that. So now I'm going to answer your question.
People were getting there because they weren't clicking through. They were actually typing in the
Exactly.
domain.
Wow.
Exactly.
And I never thought of that, but you think about it, like promoting educational content in the merchandising slider, which could show up on any like, right? Like that's going to show up on your third parties, and that's going to show up. And all of a sudden, like you see a nice photo of like authoritative looking people at a podcasting format you're familiar with, but like how to understand vehicle financing, right?
Exactly.
Gee whiz.
And there's so many
the show
different
right
layers
now.
to
I'm
that
about
too.
to go.
Yeah.
Whoa.
And there's so many different layers to that too, is that now all of a sudden you can also release the same thing on your social channels, so that you can get that employee looking like the hero, talking about what they love, giving people applicable steps that they can take in their life, whether it's how to buy a new car, should you lease, should you finance, should you lease, what are the rate differences, what are the difference in ownership type. There's just a lot of different things you can do from there. And I got to answer your question first before we get on to the next thing. Your question was, how soon did you get all the interaction?
You answered the question I didn't know I needed to ask, though. So that's even better. Yeah, how long, though? Because I think a lot of people make content, and there's this thought like, hey, I made something, and then it's like planting a seed in the ground and then just like anxiously watching the dirt.
Does it result in anything?
Right. I don't think that seed worked because there's no tree yet. Right.
Exactly. And it also matters how you launch it. When we first did it, we dropped 10 episodes all at one time. So we waited, built that content up, dropped all 10 at one time, and then continued building after that. After we dropped those first 10 episodes, within 4 weeks, we had over 460 hours consumed through podcasting platforms, through YouTube hosting, and a few other methods through there. And yes, there are some ways that you can't really calculate all that listening time. So like on Spotify, you can kind of see what your estimated listening time was. You know what your downloads were. You know what your average listen time was for those episodes. But on YouTube, it does tell you how many views you had and how much time was listened and consumed. So those are some really easy metrics to see. What was also crazy was the gap between season 1 and season 2. If you go through and see, it would have been the very last episode in season 1 that had something crazy like 1,300 listens on it, just because that one sat there for a little bit on its own between
people
seasons.
backing into it. Yeah.
Exactly. But the other nice thing is now all of a sudden, even though that exists, they can go back and listen to those other episodes, which is interesting.
Yeah, that's awesome. Man, what a great idea, and just like highlighting, integrating into the shopping journey. That's really cool. So what was your path to get to this point, like in the marketing, in the, demand gen side of auto? Where have you always done marketing, or was it like a passion project that turned into a role, or where did that come from?
Sure. And that's a great question, Kyle, because a lot of times marketers, they either come from inside auto or they come from outside auto. I actually sold at an independent import, 2 independent import dealerships for about 7 years before I made that transition over to marketing.
Okay.
But before I even was doing that, I was really big into web development and even just design as a whole. And everybody probably remembers MySpace. And what you could do is you could go through and learn HTML and CSS, and you could change your MySpace profile. So after I learned that, I was like, oh my gosh, you can do this? So I went through and did a lot of self-taught in HTML4, CSS2, and then learning PHP, server-side programming, a lot of cool stuff like that. So eventually those two paths kind of crossed, and I said, man, digital marketing is where it's at. It's fun.
That's so cool, man. That's really neat. How like the two is like, okay, I can see the way that my combined experiences lead me to this right now. What are you working on right now? Is there like, I mean, I know you're doing season 2 and that, but
Sure.
what's kind of like on the horizon for you or your career path or Gates Automotive? Like, what are you guys, the challenge that you're trying to solve?
Great question. There's always a challenge that you want to solve with whatever solution you're trying to roll out. And as long as it actually makes sense that you're trying to solve it, because a lot of people waste so much time chasing their tails saying, oh, I just want to go through and build this because it looks cool. It's got to really solve a problem. And one of the things we just rolled out, which was super simple, was we wanted to allow people to actually scan a QR code from somewhere, take them to a SMS conversation, a text message conversation, and then automatically engage that with the correct store. And this was like a super simple solution. And it's something that we struggled with for a while because we used to have to send it to one person. So let's say they saw our TV spot, they wanted to do a instant cash offer on their car. They pull out their camera, they scan the QR code and generate that text. It used to go to a person like me, and then I had to filter that over to our BDC and communicate that somehow. So a really simple solution for that is to use Twilio. With Twilio, you can program that incoming text message. You can ask them, hey, which store is closest to you? 1, 2, 3, or 4. Once that person responds, 1, 2, 3, or 4, then that goes directly to who that contact is at that store. That was a really simple solution, and it literally cost 1 cent per message in and out of that. So it's like ridiculously cheap. And, you know, I'm not saying
Have you seen like gained efficiency, or is it kind of still new?
For sure we have. And we're only, so we just released that on May 1st. So the first this month, 4 days ago.
Oh yeah.
And so even just now, we've had a few that have come in and we're able to engage that conversation just like that. Because an easy stat that we talk about a lot in internet sales, internet marketing, stuff like that is we need to engage with that customer as soon as possible because we need to continue that conversation, continue that journey. Because if we wait till minute 24 of that conversation, it doesn't matter if you respond at minute 24 or hour 24, that customer is already checked out. So the faster we can get it to who needs to respond to it, the better. So it literally will get to them within 5 seconds. And
yeah, it's not like here's a QR code, submit a lead on my website, wait till we get back to you, that type of thing. It's like
done.
Here we go.
Yeah. Right.
Exactly. And we did so we always communicate with our internet sales staff when we're releasing something like this. So we did a live demo with them a couple days ago saying, hey, here's what's going to roll out. I want everybody to pull out their phone and just do a test with this. They were amazed at how fast that lead ended up getting into their phone so they could continue that text message. They're like, wow, that was fast.
Stories like that.
But again, great. Who thought that something so simple would work and improve our efficiency and improve that customer journey? Anytime you can make it easier for your staff or improve anything for your customer to make it easier to do business with you, you should do it. It's always worth it.
Jordan, tell us something. We just kind of premiered this TV show we're doing.
Yeah.
That's kind of rewriting the narrative around retail auto. Tell us something good from within your stores or your group. Just something inspirational or some good things that you think people outside the auto industry probably wouldn't assume is happening.
I think so you guys said it best this morning on your morning episode was, I think the word was rewrite. And you're almost rewriting that history and allowing everybody to communicate what's going on within automotive. And I mean, maybe if you can hop in here and explain it better than I can, that would be great. But what's
happening in your store? What's happening in your store that's
like day in, day out, where you're like, oh, I bet if people knew this was happening in an auto dealership, it's so good that they'd be surprised.
Okay, here's a good example. Someone can come in off the street and get in as a sales consultant with us. I mean, it's not that easy, but anybody can sell cars.
Right. It's not open interviews at McDonald's.
Yeah, you're right. Right. Don't show up at the door right now. Give us some time. But selling cars can come from anywhere. And, oh man, that reminds me of that movie Ratatouille. I don't know why I always make movie references, but one of the main lines in Ratatouille from Pixar is,
Anyone can cook, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's the line, is that he's trying to figure out what that means. Anybody can cook, because anybody can't cook, but cooking can come from anyone. And you'd be surprised, these people that are looking for something from just selling cars. And the stereotypical car salesman is a burned out guy who can't succeed, that's on his last dollar. Sometimes that's true, but it's not. There's so many times that we find someone and we finally plug them in, and they just blossom and they become more confident, and they realize that they have a path and a career, and it's more meaningful than just selling a car. It's helping someone buy the next thing to get them to that family vacation, or they just had a baby, or they went through a difficult life change, or they just got their dream job and they need to get a car that can drive a little bit more distance. And seeing the sales consultants really see that bigger picture, it's really eye-opening. And that happens on a daily basis. It's amazing.
That's awesome. Well, Jordan, thank you so much for spending a little time with us. If you
Thanks for having me.
aren't checking out his podcast, More Than Cars by Gates Automotive, that's what you got to, that's what you can search it. And I just looked, it's like on every podcast platform. So
Gates Car
More
Talk.
Than
Gates
Cars.
Car Talk. Look that up.
Yeah, there you go. Gates Car Talk.
Yeah.
Head to it. You got to check it out. You'll get his laugh. You'll get his smile. Make sure you connect with him on LinkedIn or Facebook or anywhere where you get your social content. But Jordan, on behalf of myself and Paul Daly, and also Michael Cirillo, who couldn't be here today, we really think
Very mentions. Yeah.
Yeah. Kyle, Paul, and Michael, love you guys so much. You guys are big stars in my world. Thank you. It's my pleasure.
All right, after that interview and after the intro, my cheeks hurt so bad because I'm smiling. When he says in the beginning of the interview, I just wanted to smile. I just wanted to say hi,
He's
shake
got
your
the
hand, and
greatest
smile
laugh
at you. And
in
you
the
brought
whole
that
world,
up.
I think. It's
Oh,
like this like little
he does.
chuckle, it's great. Yeah.
This is a topic. This is a topic we're obviously pretty passionate about. Some of the stuff that he brought up, especially as it pertains to dealerships podcasting. I've wondered this forever. Like, I get it. People are like, but there's millions of podcasts out there now, and where are we even going to fit in? I think of the regional impact doing something that is still largely out of the norm for the general public. Like, imagine if you're the only dealership that says, hey, tune into our pod where we're going to show you the hidden features of vehicles and how you can save money and how you can get service done and cover all of the topics and put it out there. For me, it's like, well, who cares if only 100 people a month listen to that? You know how difficult it is to get 100 people into an auditorium or to a conference or into your store. Like, you've got captive listeners where you can actually engage with them and they're going to build a relationship with you without having ever stepped foot in your business.
Yeah,
I get super passionate about it.
He said that in just a few weeks they had over 400 hours of listening, and
Yeah, they did.
like maybe for those that have done podcasts, and like thought about the number of hours and multiplied however long the podcast is, like it's not a mind-blowing number, but think about that. A total of over 400 hours in a couple weeks, people have paid attention to your brand. Like that's some loyalists there. And yeah, I don't care even if it's your employees. If your employees are that attached to hearing about other employees, whatever it is, that type of brand affinity to the core, and then like as that spreads, and we know that long form is actually growing as a medium, and so I mean, he said that like the first conversations were Joe Rogan style, 2 hours long. Some of them.
Oh, that's commitment.
It's unbelievable that you can pull that off. And if people are listening that long to something, they're probably servicing with you, buying a few cars, their family members, right? So like, why not find those people, because they're going to be the real cheerleaders for your brand.
No doubt. Well, look, a marketing podcaster in automotive would obviously be one of our favorite interviews. Thank you so much for spending some time with us on behalf of Kyle Mountsier, Michael Cirillo, and myself. Thanks for listening to Auto Collabs.
Welcome to Auto Collabs. Why are we recording?
Are we rolling yet?